Let's return to This Week in America. Here's your host, Rick Bratton.
Welcome back, everybody, coast to coast. This Week in America. The wonderful children's story, Ava Fairy Loses Her Wings by Beverly Fearon, is a touching story about overcoming personal obstacles in life and the powerful healing magic of friendship, selfless service, and gratitude as Ava learns to live without being like older fairy and be friends. Beverly was born in California. She was not like the rest of her family. She had to spend a lot of time in the hospital. Learning to walk and to play with her 5 sisters was a challenge. As she spent time in the hospital, she learned to use her imagination. Even though the doctor said she would not live long, she's now a grandmother and sharing her imagination with others. Ava Fairy Loses Her Wings is a little bit of Beverly's story about how she struggled to be like those she loved, to find her place in the world using her talents, even though she had to work harder than the rest, just like Ava Fairy. Ava Fairy Loses Her Wings ranked, by the way, #1 under new releases in Amazon for children's folktale and myth anthologies for 3 consecutive weeks. And Beverly Fearon, our guest on This Week in America. Beverly, welcome to the program. It's great to have you with us.
Oh, thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you. And first of all, congratulations on #1, 3 weeks and a couple of categories on Amazon. Boy, that has to be not only getting the book published, but getting the recognition. That has to be exciting for you.
Oh, it was so exciting. Is that my first book that I've ever published? And it became #1. It was just really exciting.
Well, it was well earned on your part. This book is receiving excellent reviews, and I talked a little bit about maybe this could be young Beverly's story as well. Talk about the motivation, the inspiration for writing Ava Fairy Loses Her Wings.
Well, actually, Ava is my granddaughter. She's not a fairy, but she loves all colors. And one time I asked her, what is your favorite color? And she just says, I love all the colors. And then she spin it around, and then it just made me think about dancing and how beautiful it is. And so when I was writing it, I didn't realize that I was writing kind of an autobiographical.
Oh, yes.
Until I had read it out loud to a friend, and it was like, wow, that's very autobiographical. Had no idea.
Well, it's amazing that you sort of called on that, maybe subconsciously in the beginning, but you call on your past and tell the story. Ava Fairy Loses Her Wings by Beverly Fearon. That's Fearon if you're Googling it. We'll have the link up on our website. You can go directly to Beverly's page on Amazon. Book available at Amazon, all of the usual places. You mentioned this is the first book. So you've used your imagination telling stories for years. Now you're an author. Now you're sitting down to write a book. What were some of the things, surprising things possibly, you learned as you're creating your books? In this case, Ava Fairy Loses Her Wings.
Well, as I said, it was very surprising that it was it was autobiographical. I had written it like 10 years ago, and it was I just put it aside, and I thought, oh, I'm too scared to send anything out to any publisher, and I finally got the courage, and that was surprising that it was like, oh yes, we like it. And because I thought, oh, people are going to say, oh, this is terrible, this is just, it's an awful book story. So I was just scared. And finally I sent it out, and writing it and publishing it, it was all just wonderful surprises.
Well, and surprises in a very positive sense. As I mentioned, the book is out. It's doing well, #1 in several categories on Amazon. It's beautifully written. It's beautifully illustrated. The book is Ava Fairy Loses Her Wings by Beverly Fearon, our guest in the program, Fearon. Beverly, when you write a book, do you want each book to stand on its own, a standalone book, or are you trying to build a body of work with connections with the other books that you've written?
There, I have both actually. Some are standalone that don't have anything to do with any of the other books, and some of them have connections with the other books.
That's
They're
interesting. And you can, by the way, the other books you'll find at Amazon. If you go to Beverly Fearon, Fearon, that's Fearon. I just said it the way it looks, but don't say it that way. It's Fearon is how you pronounce it. Fearon is how you spell it. You'll go, in fact, go to our website and you can link on directly to the Amazon page. Get information on this book, Ava Fairy Loses Her Wings, and all these books. Interesting because by doing this is sort of a series, continuing some of the characters, you're able to continue with very popular characters. So many of these characters, the names are catchy. Kids will laugh. Their parents will laugh as they read the names of the characters. How do you come up with the names of the characters?
well, my Ava Fairy is named after my granddaughter, and Mia, her friend, is named after my granddaughter, and the Queen of the Fairies is named after another granddaughter. But Blister Bumm, the bad guy in this book, I just thought it just came to me one time, and I was thinking, he's going to be attacked by the bees, and they're going to sting him in the butt. So
So appropriately named is how you came up with the name of that
thought
character.
that there was a little bit of foreshadowing, and I have the sequel in my head, The Return of Blister Bumm.
Oh, and that will do well. I see another one at the top of the Amazon chart because I'm sure that will do well, and just like this one did. Now, as a writer, this is interesting. What would you choose as your mascot, avatar, spirit animal? What would you choose?
Well, I would choose an otter because otters, they're just there for fun and they just want to have fun. Um, that's my favorite wild animal anyway. So
It's interesting because you have fun doing this, don't you? In telling these stories and using your imagination.
Oh, I just love it. It's so much fun.
Have you always been a fan of reading? I get the impression at an early age you were reading and, as I mentioned, using your imagination and probably telling stories at that point. Is this something that goes back to childhood for you?
Oh, yes. Well, I did like to make up stories. And I wasn't a really big reader because I was sick a lot. And when I would try to read a book, I would fall asleep and the book would close. And I'd have to find this page again,
Yes.
and I'd fall asleep. So, but I did like to make up stories, and when I had my children, then I'd make up stories for them to tell them to, for going to sleep, and then then I had grandchildren, I made up stories for them.
It's interesting because now you're entertaining our children and our grandchildren as well as yours. It's amazing that you're there writing these books, and so many people and so many children that you don't even know about, that you've never met, never will meet, are enjoying your imagination and storytelling. Beverly Fearon is our guest in the program. The book is Ava Fairy Loses Her Wings, one of several you'll find by going to Amazon. When you read like that, and it sounds like you read just about everything you could get your hands on, you come across a lot of novels, of books that maybe a lot of people are not familiar with. What were some of your favorite underappreciated novel that maybe most people aren't even aware of?
Well, I love, it's called The We Free Men, and I'm trying to think of the
See, it is underappreciated, and
Terry Pratchett.
Okay.
Terry Pratchett. He's written many novels, and I don't think a lot of people. He's English, and it's about these fairies. But if you call them fairies to their faces, they'll beat you up. And the three things they like to do best is drink, steal, and fight. And if they don't have anybody to fight, then they'll beat themselves up just to stay in practice. So,
Practice makes perfect. Yes, that's
yeah,
determination.
yeah.
That's another
And
lesson
they're
that
only
you'll.
afraid of two things: their queen and the written word.
It's Beverly Fearon is our guest on the program. We're talking about a lot of books, but her book specifically, Ava Fairy Loses Her Wings. There's so many emotions in reading a book. Emotions in reading your book. You laugh. They're very valuable life lessons that we find in your books. What was the first book that made you cry? Can you remember that?
Oh yes, the first book that made me cry was The Hobbit, and when I hope I don't cry now.
Oh,
When the
yes.
Eagles come and pick up Bilbo um, and Sam. Uh, okay.
Well, yeah.
When the Eagles come and rescue them,
Yes.
I just cried because it's just so beautiful and it, it's so tense up until then, and it's like, oh, the Eagles are going to rescue them, yay! And so I cried.
Well, and that's the magic of writing and telling stories and getting the emotion, getting the thought. That's a book that you read years ago that is still with you and still provokes that emotion
Yes.
as you're telling the story. What were some of your favorite children's books as you were growing up? Maybe influences that had on your storytelling and writing today.
Well, actually, I had two favorite stories when I was young. When I was really little, I loved the story. It was called Great Grandpa Bunny, and I'm gonna. It's about how the great grandpa Bunny had taught his grandchildren how to paint things, not just the Easter eggs, but flowers and the icicles, and people would come, and the other animals would come from miles around and say it was beautiful. Everything was so beautiful, and um, and they didn't, and nobody knew why it was so beautiful. Maybe the nights were extra cold, or the sun shone extra warm. That they didn't know what it was, and then Great Grandpa Bunny had to go away. And
Yes.
and that same night, the sky was extra beautiful, so they knew that was their great grandpa painting the sky.
So many great memories and the power of books, and you've got a whole generation that you're impacting with your books. That's When Ava Fairy Loses Her Wings. Beverly Fearon, our guest in the program. That's Fearon. The book is doing so well and touching so many people. And when you write the book, what does literary success look like to you? What are the elements that would make you a successful writer and are making you a successful writer?
The thing that makes me feel like a successful writer is when I see somebody like a child. A friend of mine sent a picture of their granddaughter reading my book, and that just touched my heart. It was just so beautiful to see somebody that I didn't even know enjoying the book that I'd written.
That has to be overwhelming emotionally when you see something like that and understand the power of what you've done with these books. You mentioned before that you wanted to do this for a long time and you had self-doubts whether anybody would want to read it and whether you could go through with it. If you were talking to your younger self now about writing, what would it be? Because there's probably a lesson for other people out there who had some of the doubts that you have. With your knowledge now, going back and talking to a younger Beverly, what would you say to her?
I would say, um, just have a little faith and send it out. And I would have been published years
Oh,
ago,
yes, yes.
many years ago. Actually, I sat down and wrote something the first time probably 30 years ago, and my first book was published in September, this last September.
That is just amazing, and the books keep coming. What will be published next? What are you working on now?
I am actually they are getting it illustrated right now. It was supposed to come out at Valentine's because it was my first book that had a love story in it. And but the illustrator got COVID, so I told my publisher, I said, "You tell him that if he dies, I'm going to kill him." So,
well, a lot of plans have changed. When does that look like that could be out?
Probably by the end of the month.
Oh, fantastic!
Or maybe a little, probably no later than the end of April.
That we will look forward to that.
It's called The Lonely Candle Maker.
Ooh, I love that. And hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about that as well. I've got a minute or so left in the program. Talk about being able to, it's one thing to tell a story, but to be able to get across underlying life lessons, which you have as we talk about in this book, and do that in an entertaining way. So a child feels like they think they're being entertained solely. They don't understand they're actually learning something in the process. How challenging is that to tell some of these life lessons, in this case, the healing power of friendship, selfless service, gratitude, and do it in an entertaining way that will keep the attention and make an impact on a young reader?
Well, it's so funny because everybody seems to take something else from it. I thought that I was teaching a lesson about, even if you're handicapped, you can still be giving of yourself.
Yes.
You can still be who you are, and you can still be a wonderful person. And there are so many people that they call it differently abled now. And you can't tell, but I'm in a wheelchair, and I was born with spina bifida, and they said I would never walk. And I do walk. I don't do it very well, but I do walk.
Fantastic.
And it's so that was kind of what I was trying to get across. But other people have gotten other things from it. Like you were saying some things, and I was like, I didn't think of that.
Well, isn't that the nice thing about art, about writing, about creating? People will interpret in a different way. They will see something differently. They will take a different message, possibly away from what you have out there. And it's entertaining people. It's getting people to think, and it's a beautifully done book, one of several that you'll find from Beverly. This is Ava Fairy Loses Her Wings by Beverly Fearon. That's Fearon. You'll find the book available at Amazon, all of the usual places. Not only check out this book, Ava Fairy Loses Her Wings, but the other books written by Beverly as well. And hopefully we'll be able to come back and talk about the new book being illustrated now, and that should be out shortly as well. Beverly, this has been fun. I started with congratulations. I will end with congratulations on taking this book and getting to the top of the charts on Amazon. Quite rewarding, and certainly a validation for what you're attempting to do in all those years of using your imagination and storytelling. Ends up with the #1 book. So congratulations on that. Excellent job in getting a very positive series of messages out there to young people and adults who happen to read the book, probably along with their children as well. It's been fun having you on the program. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. I've really been so excited about this.
Well, it's been fun having you here and sharing the message of your book. It's Beverly Fearon. That's Fearon. This book, Ava Fairy Loses Her Wings. You'll find the book available, of course, at Amazon, the usual places. Go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Link on directly to Beverly's page on Amazon. You're listening to today's program, This Week in America, and we're back with more after these messages.
This Week in America is online. You can visit our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Scott Pinkerton, associate producer of This Week in America. Jay Anderson, segment producer. Ben Watson, webmaster. Otto Bechet, director of engineering and TV production. This Week in America produced and is a trademark of Blue Funk Broadcasting, LLC. For information on all of our guests and to listen to this week's show, our website again at thisweekinamerica.us. And I'm Sean Bratton, executive producer of This Week in America.